rip and tear until it is done.
For 7 years, Doom 2016 has been hailed as a great callback to the classic Doom franchise. A game that incentivized you to push forward into the enemy as their insides contain health and ammo for you to fight more of them. Which of course, made it attractive to speedrunners to see how fast the Doom Slayer can rip and tear until the game is done. For years, this was done by very optimized encounters, routes, and a lot of determination. But recently, that has changed, and some would argue for the better, and others for the worst. Today, we look at perhaps the hardest run that this game has to offer, the 100% Ultra Nightmare category, and how recently, new tricks changed it forever. So, let's get a baseline. What is this category? 100% meaning that everything has to be collected in the game. All secrets must be triggered, all codexes collected, 15 Argent Cell upgrades, all weapons and mods mastered, all runes collected and mastered, and all combat rating completed through each level. As imagined by the list, it's overwhelming that you have to manage all of that throughout a run. Ultra Nightmare is the highest difficulty option. All enemies deal insane amounts of damage, and the attacks happen much more often. This difficulty option also is permadeath, meaning that if a death happens at any point in the run, you have to start right back at the beginning. As well, loading checkpoint via the menu is also disabled to prevent people from avoiding deaths by triggering the checkpoint. It is challenging in 3 very different aspects: multitasking, challenge, and of course, going fast, which makes this very difficult in the eyes of the viewer and the community. I recently fell into Doom 2016 speedruns because I played so much Eternal that I developed arthritis and have a concerning amount of blood draining from my eyeballs, and I've become quite involved in routing and running the 100% UN category. So believe me when I say, this run is awesome, and for different reasons than what Eternal offers, but it's important to remember our roots and show how we got here. So let's dive into our history. One thing to note is that Doom 2016 is a game that's held together with duct tape and glue. The any percent clocks in at just under 18 minutes. This is the category where every glitch and exploit is allowed and nothing is required to be picked up. Simply get to the ending cutscene. The reason this run is able to get this low is by abuses to game mechanics and geometry. The runners are able to fling themselves into the sky with a strat known as rail boosting. This game has a neat mechanic known as a foot grab that helps with platforming. This comes into play when a jump is too short to clear a gap. Now, humans have a fault of their psychology that when they barely miss a jump that they think they should have made, but they didn't, they get mad. So, to keep them happy, the devs would trigger a mechanic to where if you barely miss a ledge, it will put you back on the ledge to make the player feel better. This mechanic works by giving the player a speed that is proportional to how far the Slayer is away from the ledge and how many frames per second the game is running at. Now, most ledges in this game would reset your speed so you don't go fast, but on specific surfaces, mainly rails, the speed does not get reset and launches at speeds faster than me hearing the microwave alarm. Another mechanic that any percent runners use is known as paper clipping. It's appropriately called that because each wall texture in this game is actually paper thin. At certain corners where the walls come in contact, these walls aren't perfectly aligned texture to texture, leading to a few pixels of empty collision. By wiggling around in these locations, the player can slide through the pixel-wide gaps and get out of bounds, thus able to navigate all around these textures to skip various cutscenes, locked doors, and other barriers that would lose precious seconds. These 2 mechanics almost single-handedly allow for any percent runners to get times this low, in combinations with other types of clips and exploits. Now, obviously, skipping directly to the end of the level in a 100% speedrun is not viable. We have to grab everything and do everything. But surely, there must be places where rail boost and paper clips would be useful. Enter Dangerous and Darave. That's an introduction, not a command. These runners were not so concerned with the Ultra Nightmare version of this category. They dared to put it to test to see how low the 100% classic run could be with all these glitches. Throughout 2021, they routed every rail boost they could find, every paperclip that saved seconds, all to push the category just over 2 hours as of the making of this video. One of the main strategies in their runs was setting up a hub area. A hub area is a checkpoint that the runners get that's a short time away from many collectibles, and preferably has an easy rail boost location located nearby. From this hub, they would rail boost to a collectible, and then reload checkpoint. This would bring them back to the hub, where they could rail boost to the next item on the checklist, and then so on and so on. So the question is, why did 100% UN runners not do the regular 100% route? As said earlier, Ultra Nightmare does not allow you to die or reload checkpoint, meaning that these hub areas are effectively useless, as the runners could not get back with a click of a button. Not to mention, a lot of these boosts skirt around death planes, sometimes very closely. In a UN run, this would mean that literally one misstep during an out-of-bounds section, one bad air strafe after a rail boost, would kill the runner instantly. It cannot be understated how the margin for error on some of these tricks is so low. Losing a run 2 hours in because of a really hard rail boost leading to an instant death would be heartbreaking and a wasted couple of hours. Thus, 100% UN runners would not ever go for those types of boosts. Okay, but that's not the full story still. Surely there exist skips that don't go from a hub, don't require an instant reload checkpoint, and are consistent enough to do about 100% of the time. Why aren't we doing those? And to answer that, we have to go to the pioneers of the category, Bite Me and Red Warrior. These two are purists by philosophy, meaning they really like playing through the game in a very casual-like manner. These tricks that were basically big sources of speed navigating through freaky textures did not feel in the spirit of playing the game, quote-unquote, properly. So when they routed the Ultra Nightmare version, they decided to exclude all these tricks. Essentially, they didn't want to do them because they didn't like them, not because they weren't allowed, which is a way to feel about things. The line of how unintended, intended, and how tricks feel are very fickle in speedruns and a source for major disagreements. And this strikes a bit harsh in this because their original routes do include very major glitches for the run that just didn't fit into the category of rail boost and paperclip. One such glitch is instant siege mode, also known as the Dreamer King siege mode shot. And this is a bug that allows runners to get massive damage onto enemies very quickly. Siege mode is an alternate fire to the Gauss cannon that fires a massive shot at enemies and delivers a sick-ass bass drop while doing it. Now, since it's very damaging, the devs did a thing called game balance and made it have a long charge-up time and hamper mobility during the charge. Instant siege mode makes it so that there is no downside. It's as simple as holding the mod fire and the fire key, both buttons, during a weapon swap animation to the Gauss cannon, or during a melee animation. It's just that simple. As you can imagine, dealing extra damage whenever, wherever you want is very powerful in a speedrun. Seriously, some enemies just die instantly in one shot with this. And for me, this kills a lot of tension in the combat. I mean, the combat's still difficult, it's just remarkably easier. And the next trick killed rune routing. Runes are special abilities in this game that a runner can equip after completing a small challenge somewhat related to the rune. I guess you could call them a runer. That's good. These are all scattered throughout the run, and well, must be picked up to complete 100%. Runs start with 1 rune slot unlocked out of 3. Then, as more runes are collected, more slots are unlocked, to a total of 3. Well, actually I lied. With a simple trick, you can have all 3 slots open from the beginning. The menu of this game was designed to be fully operable by a keyboard or the mouse. So what happens if you try to select a rune with the keyboard, but confirm that rune with the mouse? What happens is that the game gets confused. It uses the confirmation to exchange runes from the available rune slot, but uses the locked rune slot to make the swap, effectively allowing runners to use all 3 rune slots from the very beginning. This lets the first 3 runes collected in the run to have their masteries worked on right away, meaning we wouldn't have to master them later. Speaking of mastering runes, there's one example of a rune mastery being completely free. This rune mastery requires that you use the equipment 30 times. Relatively simple. But you don't actually even need to do that. An equipment picked up during the run is the hologram, and that provides a distraction for demons. And the pistol has a charge shot that fires a super powered shot, for a pistol. But you cannot cast a hologram while charging the pistol. But You hitting the equipment key with available equipment makes the rune mastery think you did. This is because the check for mastering the rune and the check to use the equipment are actually two separate checks and not tied together. So charge the pistol, spam the equipment key 30 times, and you have mastered the rune. And to be honest, I'm including this because it's mostly funny. I would argue that all three of these previous glitches are not intended behavior, nor do they align with casual purist gameplay. If the Doom leaderboards had a no major glitches subcategory for this game, I doubt the previous three wouldn't be included, although this depends on what you think is too major of a glitch. Instant Siege mode alone saves several minutes over the course of the run. The time save is comparable to how much time save paperclips and rail boosts save, I would estimate. The runners drew the line at rail boosts, paperclips, and out of bounds quite arbitrarily. They just did what they found fun, and they didn't do what they didn't like, which is fine. We all have that line that we think it goes too far, and they found this line just too far. There are two reasons why I think people generally thought these tricks were okay and not the other ones. Well, all three of those tricks are very easy to do. Mechanically, they don't require a lot, and Instant Siege mode is so easy to do that sometimes people do it on accident. Also, I think from the viewing perspective of these runs, no viewer would easily be able to distinguish that a glitch happened when they just watch gameplay of it. They just see gameplay. I mean, think about last time you watched a run you weren't familiar with, or a game that you haven't played in a while. There's a lot of things you forget about, and maybe you just assume that's how it worked. So it being visually not glitchy and it being very easy to do made it very compelling for people to use these glitches. It was only a matter of time before somebody came around who liked these glitches, and it coincidentally started about when I started running the game. Let's talk about minifish. Without using rail boosts or paper clips, they climbed to contest Bite at world record, but to be number one, they had to put in a lot of time running the game. The beginning of 100% Ultra Nightmare was brutal. There is a big encounter at the beginning of UAC that has random enemy spawns, new enemies, and then you only have a pistol and a shotgun with no real effective way to deal with them from range. This encounter was a huge headache for all of these reasons, where tens of seconds could be lost with an unoptimal spawn pattern or the enemies behaving unexpectedly. With such an inconsistent counter in the first minute of the run, it got to Mini. So Mini implemented a rail boost to skip it to increase consistency. Now, some runners have been doing tricks like this for a while. Speed of Lux and Dangerous both did similar out of bounds and rail boosts in their 100% runs, but they were not world record contenders. Mini doing this kind of popularized the use of more and more of these tricks, and thus, the floodgates kind of opened, and new runners started implementing more and more of them. So, for example, using a trick to skip an unfun section could actually be applied a lot in this game. In ResOps, for example, you normally have to run around and align a satellite to get the Mars base up and running. This section is just a walking section, so watch a cutscene. There is nothing too interesting here. It's just holding W, occasional jump, interacting with a prompt, etc. So instead, it can be made faster with a Get Railed boost, or a boost up to an invisible wall, do some out of bounds navigation, and get to the end level cutscene. Another example is Foundry, where this level ends with a long cutscene where Olivia...
I told my daughter I wasn't gonna do this, but I can't help myself. These are my men. He's hating. The game be trolling, we be lolling, she be miming dirty. I'm sorry, Popcorn, forgive me.
And as much as I would love Olivia to keep practicing her pantomiming, this cutscene lasts a minute, and you literally just watch it. To where another runner at the time, Speed of Lux, implemented a paperclip and some out-of-bounds navigation from any percent to save time waiting there first. And as it turns out, an influx of new runners who just ended up liking the new tricks. A state of competition from runners liking these tricks caused a sort of arms race for people to implement more and more of them. Entire levels were being rerouted because of this, and let's go through them all, but let's start with ARC. In ARC, we're meant to meet with Samuel Hayden, the leader of the facility, who's actually Jesus, but never mind, I'm not going to regard Eternal as canon. This section is literally just waiting as Samuel Hayden tells us where our next objective is. By a paperclip, we can skip it, and also trigger a secret at the same time. We have to detour real quick to hit a trigger to spawn in enemies, but then a precise setup has to be done to get to the other side of out of bounds collision. If the setup is messed up, Doom Guy will fall to their death or be on the wrong side of the wall, to where a backup would have to be done or else you're dead. So, those enemies that we spawned in from hitting the trigger a little bit ago allows us to basically chainsaw and then teleport in bounds to continue the run. All of this for about 3 minutes of time save, when you factor in the extra time from grabbing the secret level, which is scary in what some would consider the hardest level of the game. In Argent Facility, this level is really open and lets you tackle the objectives in any order you wish. There are 4 objectives that are filters that obviously need to be destroyed so that the demonic invasion slows down. Except, no, they don't. You can just go to the end level trigger via a rail boost. Okay, so we don't need to destroy the filters. We can just grab every collectible and complete enough combat to get 5 weapon points and then boost out, skipping every cutscene, making Samuel Hayden very happy we didn't destroy the filters. Now, this provided a challenge, as some fights can only be done after a filter is destroyed. Enter this room right here, this little freaking thing. This room has a neat little quirk, as in, I can trigger it again. As long as the fight was never finished, I can still trigger it multiple times. So, dip our toes in, kill everything in the first phase, hit a trigger to respawn the encounter, repeat 3 times, and then we trigger the gore nest encounter right in front of it. Entering the room for the 4th time, we complete the first phase of the encounter. Meanwhile, enemies chase us down from the previous gore nest encounter. Yep, 2 encounters at once. But this causes only the first wave of the gore nest encounter to spawn in. The rest of the level is done, where we return to the gore nest arena, where the second wave spawns in. And after dealing with it, getting this checkpoint is really important. It solidifies the combat rating that we got. Combat rating will not transfer into the next level if a checkpoint is not received before you complete it. And it's really inconvenient to grab another checkpoint located elsewhere in the level. Then, all that's left to be done is to pick up the last collectible by walking on a wall, and then boost to a spot to where we can boost out of the level, all for about 1.5 minutes of total time save. Vega is scary. Normally, when playing the game, you would drop down from a vent into the circuit breaker arena. After pulling a switch, a combat encounter triggers, and then after hitting another button, a final combat encounter triggers, opening the path to the next area. 2 encounters in this arena. To which afterwards, you'd have to pull the secret lever hidden behind some boxes in order to access the secret level, all of which does not need to be done by this out of bounds trick. Paper clipping into the wall and having a dangerous jump over the level, this puts the runner in front of the secret level. After jumping down, the secret can be triggered without going in bounds. But the trick is not over yet, because we have to do some precise platforming to get up. And then after all of this, you have to boost back to the circuit arena to where both encounters spawn at the same time due to us hitting the trigger from out of bounds. Needless to say, this is a daunting trick at the end of the run, which saves 1.5 minutes. Hi, this is Editing Nitro. I'm gonna be real here. I had this whole bit designed around how this trick was difficult, and if you messed it up, you ended the run. But dicking around, getting footage for the video, I actually found a backup strat, so this is no longer a run ender. I wish I edited this sooner. I just lost a run to that. Bruh. Regardless, let's get back to the video. And the last level I'd like to go in depth about is Argent Tower. And the reason I'm going over for this is that this reroute saves a lot of time. And we don't go for it. Yet. Argent Tower is the inflection point of the run. We get access to two very important pieces of equipment for the run, the double jump and the Gauss cannon. It's also a section of the run that can make or break it. This level has deceptively hard and punishing encounters, lots of random spawns, and is cycle based. The level depends on you making these elevators to progress up the tower. These elevators are on set cycles that you have to wait for in order for you to go up. And it can be made a heck of a lot shorter by not waiting for them. Remember how I said rail boosting was FPS dependent? Well, the weapon wheel is a mechanic in this game that slows down time. So when you hit the rail boost, you have effectively more frames per in-game time, leading to a bigger boost. This is what we call an Omega boost. You actually have to get the Invincity power up before you do this boost, or that big laser next to the rail can and will kill you, and sometimes fall damage. So normally how this level works is that you get the double jump, cross the bridge, barely miss Olivia taking the elevator, climb the tower, grab the Gauss cannon, reach the beginning of the run.
It's only the beginning!
Fight to get all combat rating, and in an iconic moment, grab the invincibility power up, jump off the tower, and fall all the way down to grab the last secret level. And then everything explodes as we get sucked into hell. And here's how this Omega boost will change the level. The route continues as normal until we get to the Olivia elevator cutscene where we can skip it just to boost right after it. Sure, we miss a collectible, but we'll be back for that. Go through the level as normal, and then we get to the secret level. We can actually clip into and back out of via a series of paper clips. Now, we don't have to grab the lever to unlock the secret level, nor come back to the end of the level. Now we Omega boost all the way to the top of the tower, and then get to the beginning of the run again. And now we boost down to a missed collectible in front of the Olivia elevator cutscene, ending the level. A way scarier route. But it saves about a minute and a half from just the Olivia cutscene and the Omega boost. So it's kind of worth it, honestly. The only thing holding it back is the inconsistency of the Omega boost. I didn't get it one time when editing. I had to steal footage from Dara. Thanks, by the way. And that's most of the current strats. I think it's helpful to phrase it all like this. Half the levels have some form of out of bounds or rail boost to go faster. You want an exact measurement, look at the screen. A vast majority of the skips skip what I would classify as uninteresting and unfun sections. Either really RNG-filled encounters, walking sections, or cutscenes. Which I will say, I don't think there's an argument in saying that precise out-of-bounds platforming and glitch tech is less interesting than watching a cutscene, at least in a speedrun. So, I think these optimizations make for a better run overall. However, not everyone is me. And previously mentioned Minifish felt the out-of-bounds in the early game very inconsistent, to a point where he quit the category. Part of the appeal Minifish had with the category was that it felt very much you could pick up the controller, the mouse and keyboard yourself, and do it. Like, there wasn't much going on. There was very little setups. You felt you just grabbed it and go. But these tricks went against that spirit. And to demonstrate some of the inconsistency and some of the frustration that Mini could feel, let's look at a strat that was recently implemented, ResOps Out of Bounds. Right at the beginning of the second level, Vega locks you in an airlock to explain to you that your suit can be upgraded by performing challenges.
Hello, I am Vega, the sentient intelligence assigned to Mars.
We already know this because we have played the game a few times, just a few. Directly beneath the airlock is actually a door that we open later in the level. It can actually be interacted with from inside the airlock if you look at it from just the right spot at just the right angle, which is a very precise setup. This was only found last year, 2022. Afterwards, while Vega is still monologuing, we can use this to grab the lever for the secret level and rail boost back to just after the airlock. This rail boost is very inconsistent. Then, doing some busy work grabbing a codex, Listening to Olivia how much she loves honesty and grabbing a secret, you have to parkour on the invisible wall back to the previous door that has very unintuitive collision. All of this to save 12 seconds when done optimally. To which you're very unlikely to get all that time saved due to all 3 components of the trick being very hard. In combination with the last boost of the level, the differential due to very inconsistent tricks could be up to 20 seconds, which causes me to nickname this level Reset Ops. The combinations and inconsistencies, the out of bounds, and the general vibes of the category changing, some people feel the run transformed more than what it once was, what it set out to be. In fact, it's a current discussion in the community for if we feel that these tricks differentiate the run enough to be classified as its own category. A category that would ban rail boost, PPCs, and out of bounds primarily. So we could see the potential for 2 separate 100% UN categories, a restricted rule set and an unrestricted rule set, which, looking outward in, seems like we're talking about 2 different flavors of masochism. One, which requires tight combat, upgrade optimizations, dealing with inconsistencies, and of course, going fast, and then a category which adds out of bounds navigation, rail boost, and clips on top of that. Still undecided if the split is going to happen, but that's only for official runs on the leaderboard. I like to end the video by saying, leaderboards are cool and all, but at the end of the day, we speedrun for fun. The purists who pioneer this category and didn't do out of bounds and rail boost, their viewpoint is valid, and I wouldn't want to insinuate otherwise. Just like how me, someone who likes a lot of these goofy out of bounds, rail boosts, and more, is valid as well. What's most important is that you just run something you find fun, just like how you can watch whatever you find fun. And if you like this video, honk that holler horn.